Well, I guess good evening or good morning or good afternoon or whatever it is in your part of the world. Another video blog for me this March 17th, 2008. It has been a very long time since I've updated, I understand. Things have just been insanely busy for me on this side of the ocean, but now that I finally have, some time to breathe, catch my breath, and, not go insane, I decided I'd give you an update about what's been going on. The last time I kind of wrote in was when I was back in Canada for Christmas. I was there for a month, which was great, not only for seeing my friends and family, but just to rest. I had been working pretty consistently, back to back to back days, to the point where I was becoming overtired, stressed out, and just getting sick a lot, which was not good for me at all. So I took one solid month of just essentially rest where I didn't do much at all, which was very, very good for me. And I used that time to reflect and relax and kind of, see what I was going to do when I got back. And of course what that meant is that I was jumping right back into work. Now you can probably tell that I'm wearing shorts or a no sleeve t-shirt right now. This is not an indicator of how warm it is here. No, it is not exactly that warm, but it is still getting warmer than it was. And it is going back to the topics I was talking about before. Spent a whole month there, and as some of you may have noticed, I wrote some entries about my crazy trip home. I'll just briefly go over it because it was quite the ordeal, and then I'll talk about my trip back here, which was, pretty much just as crazy, and then get into some of the stuff I've been up to. So essentially, I was trying to get home. I had booked a flight. I had everything set up, had all my bags packed early. I had actually sent one of my bags to Narita early so that I wouldn't have to worry about it. I had everything prepared and was getting ready to leave. I had my friend come over for 6 o'clock. I figured if we left then we'd be fine still, but it would be way early so we could even have like dinner and stuff like that. So because I was running a little bit behind in my class schedule, just the way it was, we didn't wind up leaving here until 7. Now, for my flight at 9:30, this should have still been fine because it only apparently takes an hour from here to get to Chitose, which is what I thought. Sadly, I was greatly mistaken in this fact, and we wound up getting there just before 9. But, for a flight at 9:30 that's a domestic, it should have still been fine. I get to the ticket counter and where I'm supposed to check in, and I find out that my flight was in fact not at 9:30, but was at 9, and the schedule had been changed since I had bought my ticket. During this process, the other coworker at the counter was going to hold the plane and get me through. The other person at the counter decided not to put me through, denied it, refunded my ticket on the spot with a 50%, or pretty much a 50% handling fee, which left me with no ticket and not enough money to buy a new one. So after doing some figuring, frantic calling back to Canada, I got a ticket for the next morning. My friend who had driven me up to the airport that evening had to work the next morning because it was a Friday, so she had to work Friday morning, so she was going to drive me to the nearest train station so that I could train in to catch my flight, which should have been fine. I would have got there with more than enough time to check in and everything. And meanwhile, we get to the station, say our goodbyes, go up the ladder or up the escalator, go down, get onto the train when I hear an announcement. The train's been stopped because of snow and won't be running for another hour, thus making me miss my flight, because it would have arrived just after my flight would have left. So, needless to say, being choked and jumping in a cab with 5 other people, rushed the airport just in time to miss my flight again. So They were nice though this time, and they didn't cancel my ticket. They put me on to the next flight because it was the fault of the train lines and not of my stupidness. Also, it was a much nicer person at the ticket counter, or at the check-in counter. They put me through onto the next flight, which I got it on. Whatever, made it down to Tokyo. Took the limousine taxi, which was expensive, but it was, you know, worth it, so I could make sure that I got my flight out of Tokyo, because if I missed that one, there was no turning back. I would have had to go back to Sapporo, and that would have been it. But anyways, get on the flight. It's supposed to leave early, gets delayed, got delayed about 50 minutes because of some passenger stupidity, and finally got to Chicago. At Chicago, and here's the lovely thing, I had an 8-hour layover, but because Chicago was having crazy winter storms and things like that, didn't quite make it for a lot of people, and there was problems with flights getting canceled, flights getting delayed. So since I had an 8-hour layover, I was, you know, pretty safe as far as I could understand. But, you know, I double checked and asked several times, is my flight canceled? Is my flight going to be delayed? What's going to happen? And if my flight gets canceled, you know, what happens? I was told that they don't put people up in hotels, and that if I needed to go in a hotel, that I have to pay for myself, and they don't give allowances for that, which was quite upsetting. But I was told very early on, and several times, that my flight would not be canceled. I was one of the lucky ones, and that I wouldn't have a problem. 8 hours later, my flight got delayed by another hour, and then another hour, and then half an hour, 15 minutes, until the total came to another 5 hours. So on top of my 8-hour flight, or 8-hour layover, I had another 5 hours in delays. So I wound up getting home to Edmonton at 3:30 in the morning, and needless to say, I was quite exhausted, but was thankful to finally get home. And then was my month-long vacation, which was great. It was great to see everybody, had a good Christmas, got some good Christmas presents. Biggest one would be my flight from my lovely mom and dad, which, you know, was wonderful because, you know, I wouldn't have been able to go home for Christmas otherwise. Got some gift certificates, got some cash, and got to spend a lot of good time with people. Then was my ordeal getting home. Now, because I wasn't sure exactly what day I was flying home, I didn't book a ticket in advance, and I didn't find out until later. Well, the plan that I was going to make was that I was going to book either a ticket just before I left, or once I got to Tokyo, to see if I could use my miles or something, to see if I could get a really cheap way home. So I was going to play it by ear. So I got to Tokyo. Everything was okay, got through Narita, whatever. Try and use my points. I figured I'm going to use my miles, my frequent flyer miles that I just racked up a whole ton of by flying back to Japan. I was going to use all those miles and try and get a flight to Sapporo with them. After calling them, they tell me, oh no, you can't book for 4 days before. You have to wait 4 days before you can book a flight. So if I booked a flight on the 17th, the flight couldn't leave until, say, the 21st. So I was like, okay, fine, you know, I can deal with that. I'd gotten back on the 7th, or somewhere around there, and so I figure, okay, that's okay. So they check my account, and they find out that, oh, sorry, your miles have not accrued yet, and thus you can't book your flight. And I'm like, I just flew from Edmonton to San Francisco, and from San Francisco to Tokyo. I have more than enough miles. What is your problem? And they told me, sorry, your miles won't appear on your account for another 2 to 3 days, and that if you want to book, you would have to wait until after that. Well, my first class started on the 22nd that I had to get back to teach for, so that just wasn't going to work. And at that time, it was 7 o'clock at night. I was exhausted, and I just said, screw this, I'm just going to go to the airport tomorrow morning bright and early and see what I can do there. So I trottled off with my 3 huge suitcases, and I took 2 of them, and I sent them off by Takubin is what they call it here. It's shipping cost, and it looks like I'm just about out of time on this entry, so I'm going to finish off here, and then I'll continue it in the next part.